Now, EU foreign ministers are meeting in Prague to discuss a ban on tourist visas for Russians. Eastern countries are backing the idea, but Germany and France regard it as counterproductive. Instead, Germany's foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, has proposed suspending a European visa agreement with Moscow, which makes it easier for Russians to enter the bloc. Several EU countries have already implemented limitations or bans on Russian tourists. Well, Roderick Kiesewetter is a member of the German Parliament for the opposition Christian Democrats and a defence and foreign policy expert. Welcome to DW. What's your thinking on this? Should the EU impose a full visa ban on Russian citizens?
Yes, hello. For a long time, I supported a visa ban on Russian tourists because I supported visa liberalization, but we see there are no effects on the Russian society. So I'm completely supporting the position of other European Union member states to extend the visa ban also for tourists, because Russia is exploiting that. And I do not understand the timid position of our Chancellor, who is isolating Germany once again in Europe.
Well, he's not isolated. He's got France behind him, so that's the two biggest countries in the bloc against this idea.
Well, I believe this is an isolation because after the war against Ukraine and the Free West, the countries between Russia and Germany and France will reposition themselves, and they will very well see who has supported the freedom and was against Russians' liberal handling of the situation and the exploiting of the Western liberalization. And therefore, I believe that France and Germany will be isolated in the future, especially regarding the new economic situation which we will have after gas prices and electricity will come to a new position then.
So what would a ban on Russian tourists achieve?
Well, the vast majority of Russian people cannot afford to spend their holidays in Cyprus or in Greece or in Italy. So especially officials will exploit this. And therefore, we must make clear to the Russian population that you are not welcome on the European Union soil as long as the vast majority of the Russian population is supporting the war against Ukraine and against the rule-based international order. We must give signals to the Russian population that their system is destroying the rule-based order and is destroying peace and security in Europe. And therefore, I am supporting a visa ban, and I do not understand the position of our Chancellor as well as of the French President.
And we have the German Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, with a sort of compromise deal whereby the EU would suspend a deal with Moscow, which would mean Russians having to wait longer and pay more for a visa. It doesn't sound like that's a compromise that you'd be interested in.
Oh, that's an excuse. That's a try to mitigate the deadlock inside our government. I support, in general, the Green position to have a stronger stance against Russia. And I understand that Annalena Baerbock is trying to find a way out, but the real challenge is in the Chancellery, and we must name this, and we must also make very clear that we need strategic communication towards the Russian population, that they are not welcome as long as this is a system which is destroying peace, stability and freedom in Europe.
OK, well, that's very clear. Thank you so much for joining us. Roderick Kiesewetter, a member of the German Parliament for the opposition Christian Democrats. Thank you. DW's Alexandra von Namen is in Prague and discussed the visa issue with the Czech foreign minister.
Visa restrictions are looming large over a meeting of foreign ministers here in Prague, with some member states pushing for a complete ban on tourist visas for Russians. And we can now speak about that with Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
So, Minister, your country is in favor of a complete ban. Why?
We propose that as a policy solution for meeting here and discussing it here at the Gymnich meeting in Prague. And the situation is quite clear. There is no way how we can accept that there's a war in Ukraine and that we accept classical tourists from Russia and that we would be hosting them. Of course, this measure is not intended to stop all possible travel between the EU and Russia. Of course, there's many good reasons for travel, such as humanitarian reasons or family members, for example, cargo drivers, etc. But on the other side, we have to accept that the Russian elite, which is traveling to Europe and has no real connection to the war in Ukraine, would not be affected. So I think it's up to us to now decide how to approach it, and I hope that there will be that we will agree on a political solution and that it will be later implemented.
But is it not important to respect the power of people-to-people contacts and to fight for the minds and hearts of the Russian people, as France and Germany, who both oppose such a ban, are arguing?
Those who travel to Europe from Russia, those are not typical Russian citizens. It is an elite from Moscow and St. Petersburg. We have to understand that. And to travel to the EU, it's not a right. It's a possibility which can be or not can be fulfilled, and we have to understand that the war in Ukraine, it's a really dramatic situation. Look what Russia has done in Bucha, look what they have done to Mariupol, look how they are trying to blackmail us with the situation in Zaporozhye, and they are playing with the nuclear power plant. This is something which cannot be ignored, and we need to be looking for ways how to show the Russian regime that they are behaving in an unacceptable way.
The foreign ministers are expected to reach a deal, a political deal in principle, to slow the visa processes without completely banning them altogether. How significant would that be?
That's a major step, it's a significant step, and I would welcome that, and for me it would be a good solution. We have to understand that there is a visa facilitation agreement which has a certain political agreement in it. This has been broken. We don't have a good relationship with Russia, so this visa facilitation agreement is no longer valid in its essence. So we should revise that. But itself, this wouldn't have a influence on giving or not giving visas to Russian tourists. It will just change the price tag of this visa. But then we are also moving in debate for the reason for which this visa would be issued. And we have some kind of way how could we agree, but that's something which will be clear after the debate as such. So this is something I don't want to predict before the meeting itself.
DW's Alexandra von Naumann speaking with the Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky.